Welcome everyone to our Resource YYC Lunch and Learn. We're happy to have you today. Just so you're aware, Resource YYC is a co-working space for professionals. We have dedicated desks, office spaces, and virtual office options. And you can drop in if you want to just try us out. So today we have our fantastic guest speaker, Stan Peak. And so he will be telling you a little bit about leadership and some other great aspects. So I hope you can learn some interesting things on how our world has changed and how we can change with it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you to you, Ron, Bill, the whole team at Resource YYC. I'll second my support for what a great location you guys have. I remember I was one of the first, I think, members in your original location on 10th Ave. And so now your location right on 9th Ave on the 20th floor is phenomenal. A great place to network, a great place to impress your clients, especially if you're a small startup and you don't necessarily have the means to rent out an entire floor of premium real estate. So yeah, love Resource YYC and appreciate the opportunity to just come on and help people. That's what I'm here to do. For those that don't know me, my name is Stan Peak. I'm an executive coach, business coach, if you will, basically a lifetime entrepreneur. I've owned or co-owned 7 businesses in my career, which has given me ample opportunity to make 1,000 mistakes on my own dime and learn the hard way. So that really is what prompted me to help entrepreneurs and leaders to try to, grow and help others on a pathway with less pain. So that's what led me to start, which was my 3rd company at the time, and just been a phenomenal journey helping others learn about themselves and learn about their team and lead others to success. So when you do that, because we're here to talk about my recent book, Life Literacy, which I wrote with business partners and friends. I know my screen's blurry. I don't know how close I should get. Maybe, I don't know. I'll fix it, but that's Life Literacy, real life knowledge and skills for the next generation to succeed, with Matt Young and Nelson So. And the reason we wrote that book is when you spend so much time helping others in their businesses, whether they're founders, leaders, whatever the case may be, you do tend to come up upon trends. Might be economic trends, might be trends in terms of business ideas. It might be trends in terms of challenges. And what really started to happen is we came up a bit on a trend about changing workforce dynamics. So we're going to have lots of Q&A, and by all means, use the chat until we do a formal Q&A. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them, as we go here. And Rosemary, if I can lean on you as well for that, that'd be awesome. But there's a story behind why we wrote this book, and it's really a story about challenge. In my 2nd business, which, backing up, I owned 2 businesses in health, fitness, and medical before becoming a business coach. And I loved it. I had an 18-year career. Never thought I'd be wearing a suit every day. My suit was running shorts and a t-shirt, and I loved it. My friends were jealous, and I loved my career, loved it, until I didn't. And what happened was, sure, the business grew, my role evolved, my responsibilities increased, which I'm fine with. But what really happened was I was surrounded by like-minded people that were hardworking, saw fitness as a fantastic career and the way to help people, specifically a way to help people achieve their potential and achieve goals. And over the years, it started to be more and more work to get more and more of the team on board behind that. And we had some amazing adventures. In the book, the first chapter is really talking about my business partner, Matt, who's also my mentor, who ended up selling his business that he ran for 25 years for the same reason. Between the 2 of us, we've taken people to Machu Picchu several times, the Grand Canyon. I can't tell you how many times. Kayaking in the ocean, adventure trips to Maui, you name it. Matt did the there's a desert in Sahara, like just so many, the Sahara Desert, so many things, triathlons, marathons, so many adventures. And we had a team that was like, pinch me. I'm hiking Kilimanjaro in Africa for work and then having a safari with clients. This is amazing. And then we had a team, years later that was like, I don't know, how much am I going to get paid to do that? And that sounds like a lot of work. Plus, I'm going to be with clients the whole time. I don't get to relax or party. So really the joy started to erode. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's millennials and all this, because some of the hardest working people I know are millennials. I lost the passion for what I did because, as my business partner, Matt, put it, the number of people in the organization who didn't have our values started to outnumber the people who did. And it wasn't a generational thing. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, who knows? But it was, the focus went from the customer to the individual. What's in it for me? And I don't thrive in environments like that, especially not as the leader who has to every day get people motivated behind our organizational objectives, our purpose, our vision. So that's what led me to change careers. And it really felt like a personal struggle. I felt like it was my fault. And hey, there's always a personal component. I did lose passion. I did lose interest. I could not recover it. I did not want more of the same. So moving forward, speaking to Matt every Friday, we started to wonder, like, is this just us? Are we just old farts now? And now we're those guys who are, blame the up and coming. Oh, in my day, we used to, we wondered if we were becoming those guys. So Matt, as I mentioned, sold his business. He's had a lot of success and a lot of people come to him for advice. I started becoming a coach because a lot of people were coming to me for advice. And we started thinking, is it just us? And we reached out to our network. Our network had grown fairly large at this point. We interviewed 68 executives in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom to figure out, is this just us? Specifically, we asked 3 questions of our network. We said, what skills do you see entering the workforce in new hires? The second question was, what skills or attributes or attitudes do you not see entering the workforce? And the third question was, what should we be teaching the new generation, the new workforce, to succeed or thrive in business and in life? And those 3 questions really, our survey became the crux for why we wanted to write this book, because we realized it wasn't just us. I'm going to share my screen, and my mouse is frozen. It's always awesome when that happens at the perfect time. 2 seconds. I have this thing, there's a few people I know on this webinar here. And if you've known me for more than 5 minutes, you know that technology always messes up when I'm controlling it. So this is true to form here. 1 more second here, and then, come on, perfect timing. Sorry here, team. Okay, well, I'll wait while this is ready to share here. There. Okay, but basically, I'm going to pull up the results of that survey. And when we realized that it wasn't just us, we decided that it was time to actually write this book. Not just write the book, but offer solutions. At the heart of it, there was a few problems that were emerging, systemic problems that weren't easy to fix. On the one hand, what we realized actually, and you'll see when I'm able to share my screen, there's a changing trend, economically speaking, on the macro level. Since about 1900, if not before, the age of retirement, at least in the United States, was declining. So in other words, people were able to retire younger every year. And that trend continued for over 100 years. So basically, the retirement age had gone from people retiring right before they die to retiring by the age of about 63. And then, there we go. You can see my screen? Beautiful. So effectively, yeah, come on. So basically, people were retiring later and later. You think about 2008, the global economic crisis. Here in Alberta, you think about 2014, towards the end of 2014, and the price of crude starting to plummet, and international competition, international supplies of oil being greater than ever. The supply-demand curve really plummeted and bottomed out the oil and gas industry, especially here. I know it hit other areas as well, but our local economy was decimated. Over 250,000 Albertans lost their jobs. And of course, the people on this call probably know that better than most people. So the point is, with global economic events, the average North American organization business was running a 9% EBITDA before 2008. And with the increasing frequency and severity of recessions and disruptive economic events, a lot of businesses are now running a less than 9% profit margin. So why that's relevant is shareholders, owners, boards of directors are becoming less risk tolerant. Okay, so that was a long way to really build up there, but that's really important to think about. Okay, the powers that be, the people driving businesses today are less risk tolerant. Now you think about people's personal economic situation. Their retirement savings are being eroded. And so this is that curve. In 1900, people would retire at around 76 years of age. And that started declining over the next 100 plus years, where you can see in 2000 and 1990, the average United States retirement was around 63 years old. By 2010, it was 64. And by I think it was 2019, our most recent stats, it had gone up to 67.8 years. By the way, the oldest retirement among all civilized nations, first world nations in the world, was Norway at 68. So basically, the United States went from, look how lucky we are, we're living the dream, to we're working as late as just about anyone on the planet. So that's the second problem, is boards of directors are less risk tolerant than the leaders who already have the best jobs, the executive team, managers, owners. They're working longer. Those two problems act in unison, because the longer the owner of the company, the longer the CEO works, the less time the next person has to develop skills, to develop experience. And then you add the third problem in our perfect storm, is we have a very different way of looking at the world. The executives that we interviewed, they saw some good things happening. They saw some really promising traits. You can see this. This is basically the skills we see entering the workforce. We see the new generation as being very technologically literate, computer literate, online skills. That showed up in 26.36% of all responses. We saw lots of drive or ambition or energy around change. There was lots of theoretical or technical skills. And there was the desire to belong to a team. After that, you can see communication skills. They showed up 12% of the time. And being flexible, adaptive, or innovative showed up 9% of the time. So what's interesting is, before we even get to the skill gaps, you can look at this. 51 executives said that they see lots of people wanting change, but only 22 responses were that the next generation is capable or adaptive to change. That's already a gap. There's the old cliche, right? Everybody wants change, nobody wants to change. So when you have that sort of, I want an outcome, but I don't want to drive it, that's obviously, there's going to be a disconnect between what we want to see and what we're willing to do to make it happen. Now we looked at the skill deficiency trends. Now you can see that we interviewed 68 people and we have 100 responses, but you can also see that this is response trends. Right? This is what showed up. A lot of executives had more than one answer, and those answers kind of lined up, were similar. So the biggest trend we saw was that the executives we interviewed saw a lack of drive or work ethic. So they saw a lack of focus and resilience or an earn it attitude in the up and coming generation. That was the number one gap, and you can see by far. 67 responses in total were a lack of soft skills or inadequate people skills, a lack of emotional intelligence, or at least a lack of adequate emotional intelligence. Not that disparate from that is poor communication, right behind at 63 responses. And then you see, kind of more X and O skills, lack of strategic or critical thinking, poor teamwork, and insufficient financial acumen, which was cited both at work and at home. A lot of employers were sick of, hearing about someone's inability to budget manifesting as, I don't make enough money. So then it came down to, okay, well, what if this is the case, what should we teach? And the executives were hoping that parents, teachers, people like myself, in leadership development would teach emotional intelligence, social and soft skills. That was the number one skill they hoped that we would see more of, showing up in a third of all responses, 75 total responses. They also were hoping that we would see more strategic or critical thinking, the ability to kind of problem solve. And then there's that resilience or work ethic, that more personal attribute side. Communication showed up, 36 responses. Personal and professional development, the desire and the hunger to get better instead of, I have a degree now, I believe I'm entitled to a six-figure salary, and I don't want to go to any more schooling. And then financial literacy showed up. So again, I want to make sure that I re-emphasize one of our co-authors, in fact, Nelson So, is a millennial, one of the hardest working guys I know. He's a CPA, CFO, public speaker, two-time best-selling author. He's done a TED Talk. The guy is ridiculous in terms of his drive, his work ethic, and his commitment. So our research and our book in no way was designed to bash young people. Or if it was going to bash anyone, it was going to bash everyone, because we seem to have this impasse where people my age and older don't want to give the keys of the kingdom to young people. And some young people are like, oh God, my boss is so stuck in their ways. They don't get it. And if no one changes, nothing changes. So we actually wanted to write this book to speak to both sides of the fence, if you will. Leaders in their 50s and 60s and 70s, 40s for that matter, need people in their 30s and 20s for business continuity. One of the things on that graph that we quickly went over, I'm going to go back up here. On the right-hand side, you can see that within 10 years, at least 75% of the workforce is going to be made up by millennials and the generation after them. Baby boomers are retiring in droves, and Gen Xers like myself are already even starting to retire. So if we want our business to last, which of course we need our financial infrastructure, our economic infrastructure to continue, we need the next generation to be able to keep going, to pick up where we leave off and drive it to success. And we don't do that by pulling over while the car's still moving and saying good luck. We have to prepare the next generation for success, or else that's not leadership. So like I said, we really wanted to speak to the incumbent generation, the people who have already been working for decades, to say, give your head a shake. You might not, because a couple people have given you a bad experience, doesn't mean that you can't invest in the next generation. That's what leadership is. And we also wanted to speak to people, like from my son's age to people in their, late 20s, to say there's a reason why the person interviewing you might be short-tempered. There's a reason why your interview might be so brief. It's wrong, but chances are they're taking a sample pool of their experiences and they're judging you on what other people your age have done. Not shown up for a job interview, shown up late. I've even heard of, from colleagues, people's parents joining them for a job interview. There's horror stories out there. And unfortunately, a lot of people who have to hire so often are becoming quite jaded. And they're starting to judge an entire generation by the mistakes of a relatively small amount of people. But those mistakes are happening frequently enough that now an entire generation has a black eye in the eyes of the Gen Xers and baby boomers. So again, we wanted to speak to the younger generation on how to stick out in a good way. The habits and disciplines that scream preparation, work ethic, high value contributor, things like showing up early, doing your research ahead of time, asking great questions in an interview, being professional, being present, not having your phone out while you're on an interview, not asking when your lunch break is on your first day. All kinds of, and this is not to say, we're advocating for near slave labor. We just wanted to teach the younger generation an old school work ethic. And we wanted to teach the old school why we need new ideas, new innovation, and new blood in the organization. So thank you for humoring me. That was a long preamble to talk about the complex problems we're seeing, but we are seeing those in droves. When I talk to leaders in organizations, I talk to leaders in all kinds of businesses in a lot of countries, and they are seeing this firsthand. When I talk to senior business leaders about this problem, their frustration is noticeable. It's palpable. They roll their eyes, they get frustrated, but then they get it. They understand that they can't just judge the next generation. They need to be part of the solution. And I'm going hard here, not just about our book. I'm going hard here because this is a societal issue. And there are people on this call that will never write a book. That's fine. There are people on this call that will never run a consulting business. Also fine. That doesn't mean that this problem is not related to you, because we're really looking at the problems of today and tomorrow. And there are, how many engineers are there in Alberta that have been made redundant? How many, all kinds of jobs, great jobs. A lot of people who, once had a thriving practice or job now have found themselves looking for work. So the reason I'm going deep here is to make sure that anyone who's listening to this takes the time to understand what the problems of today and tomorrow are, in order that you future-proof your skills. If we stay in the past, we get left the way of the dinosaur. There's not a single telephone booth repair person who's still working today, because nobody uses telephone booths anymore. Even though there are people older that might prefer that's how they would make their calls. But doesn't matter how much of a laggard we are with technology, the world eventually moves on, and it does leave certain technologies, certain behaviors, certain skills in the past. So the ability to communicate to a different audience, the ability to understand how they think, what matters to them, the ability to identify what we call their currency, what motivates them, that's a highly valuable skill. Because in any business, someone is motivated by numbers. Someone else is motivated by what's good for the team. Someone else is motivated by giving the shareholders their best return. Someone else is motivated by implementing a solid roadmap and good operational procedures to make sure we can scale the business. There's always different levels of motivation and different types of motivation. So leaders of tomorrow have to be able to take the same information and have it land with different types of stakeholders in a way that we can align motivation. That is a critical business skill of tomorrow. But regardless, we really wanted to solve the problem. We're not going to help everybody. Yes, we run a consulting company where we do, financial, marketing, leadership, coaching type of, engagements. But this is a worldwide problem. And my business partners and I and all the coaches that work for us are still less than 100 people. So we're not going to be able to solve this. But leadership is not staying on the sidelines while you see a large problem play out. Leadership is doing your part and realizing that if you contribute to a solution, well, you're helping. So that's really a big part of it. I'm going to move back down to the skills we hope to teach for the future. And actually, I'm going to go a bit further to things we can do right now. Things leader can do right now, and then we'll go into questions, is look at succession planning right now. If you're in a business, if you own a business, if you're a leader in a business, we have to look at who's going to replace all the key decision makers in the business in the next 5 to 10 years. Because proper succession planning means identifying viable candidates and looking at skill gaps. Let's say your CFO is going to retire in 2 years and your VP of finance doesn't have any experience in taxation. Well, you need to do some taxation training, if not some on-the-job experience for your VP of finance before they have to become the CFO if they're the identified successor candidate. We have to look internally. What are the training or retraining programs we have? Disney is really looked at as the place for hospitality and service training. Executives from all over the world, even if they don't work in hospitality, fly their team, or pre-COVID, they would fly their team, down to California or Florida, Disney University, and take them through what does it take to train, retrain, learn, and maintain excellent service standards. You can fly down and learn from Disney, or we can internally look and say, what do we teach? How often do we test it? How often do we retrain it? We have to audit our systems. We have to also audit our talent pipelines. Where are we getting our best people from? If it's our first degree network and our first degree network is all retiring, we have to rethink where we're getting our great people from. Are we, do we have any sort of relationships with trade schools or universities or colleges? Are we advertising on certain places? Do we know how to use Indeed to work for us? We have to understand where we're getting our next great people from. Once we have those people, we have to know how to grow them. We have to look at our leadership development programs, because having a leadership development program that checks a box is a way to waste money and fail as a business. If our senior leaders are working longer and our board of directors tolerates failure at a lower degree, then that means that people in their 20s and 30s are not going to get leadership opportunities until later in their career. So what does that mean? From a leadership standpoint, young people are going to have to play catch up. They're going to have to replace someone after 2 decades of experience who had 4 decades of senior leadership experience. It's unfair. If the business is going to maintain the same level of capability, we have to put double the resources into the next generation because we've given them half the experience. I hope that makes sense to everybody. If it doesn't, there's a lot of businesses that are in for a rude awakening. Lastly, it's really important that all businesses review their organizational culture, which is their purpose, their vision, their mission, and their values. Your purpose is why you exist beyond making money. If you're a not-for-profit, it's why you exist beyond growing membership. Your vision is, based on why you exist, what is the better future you're creating? where are we headed as an organization? The mission is tactically, operationally, consistently, how are we going to get there? You know, is it the restaurant that sources farms within 100 miles? Like that's a mission. That's a tactical strategy that defines how you're going to achieve what you're talking about. And your values, who belongs, based on their consistent behavior, what's tolerated, what's not tolerated, what defines a great team member, and how do we operationalize that in our recruitment, in our hiring, in our training. So these are 5 things that leaders can do tomorrow to make sure that they have a better future and a better chance of still being around, 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. If we don't do these things and the train hits us out of nowhere and we lose all of our experience and talent, it will be too little too late. And there will be a lot of businesses that just aren't around in the future because they can't be reactive to such a large and complex problem. So I've been yapping for quite a while. While I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat box. So Rosemary, I don't know if there has been anyone that has asked a question. If not, then feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. I'd love to tackle any questions before I go any further, because even I don't want to hear me speak for an hour. So any questions? And if they are in the chat, then Rosemary, if you don't mind, just unmute yourself and you can ask it. And it can be anonymous. You don't have to tell me who it's from. But the only stupid question is one that isn't asked, right? By the way, while people are waiting for questions, again, this does come from our book, Life Literacy. It is available. I mean, you can go to lifeliteracybook.com. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Chapters in the States, Barnes and Noble, indie bookstores. I think there's an entire indie bookstore online, which will tell you which bookstores in Calgary if you don't want to shop with the big guys. But yeah, it's available almost anywhere you get books. And again, I'm not just here to talk about the book. I'm here to talk about a pretty large problem that we're here to address. So hopefully this has shed some light on A, how people can avoid the problem, and B, how each of you, as in our workforce, can refine your skills to help solve the problem, because that will make you super valuable into the future. Yeah, any questions pop up? So I'll have questions then, because this will hopefully encourage people to ask questions. Oh yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I had to pop off for a second. Can you go back to what looks to be slide 8, the keys we're trying to give?
Yeah.
Sorry, and what's the premise of this? Like, when you say we're trying to give, is that what we want them to have, or is that what they want to have, or can you give me a little more framework around that?
So yeah, so if you had to pop off, basically, after the kind of frustrating experiences myself and my business partner and co-author had, we kind of really thought, are we just old guys that don't want to deal with the next generation? So we interviewed 68 executives in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom about what skills are you seeing entering the workforce? What skills or attributes are you not seeing? And what should we be teaching the next generation to thrive in business and in life, tomorrow? And that's what this is these are the skills of the future that business leaders feel we should be teaching people in their teens and 20s, so that they have a better chance of thriving when they show up at their employer's door.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I guess that I'm not arguing with that, obviously, but that's a perspective of those guys like us, right? Bunch of old gray-haired guys, and what we think those people should have.
Right.
I'd be interested to just see the other side of it, is what do these younger people coming into the workforce, what skills do they think they have? So I think that's a little bit about, the slide before this that you had that I did see. but not only what do they think they have, but what do they wish they had more of, or what do they find that they're lacking? I just think it's an interesting sort of comparison, because it's like, me telling my kids what they should be doing. Well, Dad, that's just you, barking at me again about what, you old gray haired guys. Well, I don't have any hair, but you old gray guys, gray bearded guys think it should be. And it doesn't always line up with the way they see the world. I mean, to be a TikTok influencer, do you really need emotional intelligence? Do you really need critical thinking? Those sorts of things, maybe not. I don't know. I support this. I mean, I think this list is fantastic and is a really good list. And if anything, I think the financial literacy is the part that disappoints me, that it's so low. A little bit of my speaking would be that I just don't think we do enough to drive that with children at any point in our society. There's too many kids coming out of school that really, can't balance a checkbook sort of thing, and too many people that don't understand what credit is and isn't, and they can't look at something and contemplate what the long-term cost is of something, or what the long-term value is of spending $1,000 on a couch that lasts you 20 years versus spending $500 on a couch that lasts you 2 years, sort of thing, right? So anyway, a little bit of my offside, but I just wanted to kind of cover that off. I just think that's an interesting thought. It's just sort of that, what's the other side? It's, or even if confront them with this list, do the same thing with 50 Gen Xers or Gen Y and Gen Zers and say, hey, what do you think about this list? Do you wish you had more of this or something? So
it's such a good question. And, we tried to actually have a equal but opposite list, even for the book. It just, because of my age and because of who I spend my time with, I didn't, also the fact that as this was getting closer and deeper into COVID, the ability to go to a school, like I speak at the University of Calgary and Mount Royal University all the time, but not during a lockdown, right? So we weren't able to get in front of a whole bunch of young people to kind of vet this list or create the equal but opposite. However, I did do that with as many people as I could that were in that ideal age of teens to 20s or even early 30s. And I did find a little bit of a gap. Maybe it's a little bit of a self-awareness gap, because really what showed up for me the most when I interviewed young people was they were looking for more strategic, learning. How do I get ahead? How do I get ahead? And they thought it was an X and O thing, when clearly, like you said, Chris, guys like us, I shouldn't say guys, people of our age are really seeing the EQ gaps, the soft skill gaps, not just like the strategy stuff can be taught. It's the personal attributes, the interpersonal attributes is still the gap. And it's a gap that the young people aren't seeing. They are seeing, some of them, the financial, to their credit. There's a lot of young people that are obviously smart enough to say, I wasn't taught how to build a budget in school. I wasn't taught about investing. I wasn't taught about, credit versus debt, appreciating asset versus depreciating asset. And I absolutely think that that's an educational gap. And that's what our co-author Nelson spends his whole career on, speaking at conferences, going to universities, even high schools, teaching those, because it should be curriculum and it's not.
One other thought I had as you were saying that, I'm sort of putting myself back to my 20s. It might be hard to believe, but at one point I was a young student in university, and thinking, I wonder what I was like, and I wonder what the 50 and 60-year-olds of those days would have said about me and my peers. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was very similar to this. Like I don't know that this is a Gen Y, Gen Z thing, or if this is just a constant, people with more maturity, wisdom, and experience can look back and say, these are the types of things you're going to need to move on. And that's probably, I would think that's probably held up more through time than related to one particular set of, a generation or a subset or something.
It's such a good point, because you're right. Forever, the older generation has said, oh, the younger generation is damned. In my day, we blank, this generation is so lazy. And that has been happening forever. I guarantee my parents, grandparents, teachers said the same thing about me. The difference is really from 2007, two things have really changed. The invention of the smartphone and social media. We could say the internet, but I'm not that, like, I played video games growing up, not a lot, but I did. So I'm not, above reprieve here with these trends. The difference is in 2007, doing the math, whatever, I was, 30 or older. And, so the smartphone, I wasn't on it all the time. Social media, the only reason I'm on it is because I'm a business owner. So in not judging the young generation, but unfortunately for them, they've grown up with TikTok, with YouTube, with Facebook, and it is addictive. The best marketing, digital marketing and strategic marketing professionals, a lot of them on the planet, are working for these humongous corporations that keep people glued to their phone. And then, us older generation, we wonder why we can't get our teens off their phone. Why the first thing they ask when they go to a restaurant, what's the Wi-Fi password? And we get pissed off, but we realize that we just didn't have that when we were young, so we can't really judge. And that's the only reason is the double whammy of 2007 beyond of smartphones and social media is that it has accelerated the widening of this gap. Because you're right, old people have been condemning young people forever, and young people have been rolling their eyes at us old people forever as well. But now the gap is widening because of invasive technology that we never get away from. Good question.
Thanks, Dan. I
No
appreciate
problem.
it. It's been some interesting points and good conversation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I guess the question, and this would be to everybody, is when you understand these skill gaps, when you understand skills we need to teach the young generation, how would you, this is a question for yourself, how would you evaluate your own emotional intelligence, your own soft skills, your own critical thinking? How resilient are you? Do you quit early? Do you find ways, innovative ways to keep going, try new things, dust yourself off, pick yourself back up over the long haul? These are all things that we should evaluate ourselves, because these aren't just skills that employers are asking young people to have. These are skills that employers know are critical to success. Doesn't matter how old we are. These are skills that are needed. The next question is, when we look about successorship, leadership transition, skill transition, passing down knowledge, how do you help yourself in that challenge? Because if we can really make sure that these skills are top of mind in our own repertoire, and that we can help employers and organizations with the problem they're about to face, if not already facing, we make our resume, our real life walking resume, nearly bulletproof. We arm ourselves to become solution providers for problems that are really relevant and present. We're not staying with what we did in the past for a paycheck. And that's how we can be very valuable. So far more than the book, great if people buy it. If they don't, doesn't matter. What I really hope to get out of today is to help people understand how to make sure their skills are ready for tomorrow. So my question to each of you to reflect on is, how are you doing on this list of skills, and how are you helping your organization or several organizations through that difficult transition? Happy to field more questions if there's any that have come up. And if there isn't questions, then regardless of the book, I know you interview other authors here, and I got to tune into more of these, but really, leaders are readers. No one, I don't care if you've been in business 50 years, you've been successful, doesn't matter. Nobody can get by tomorrow on what they learned yesterday. We all have to continue sharpening the axe, so to speak, in terms of our perspective, our knowledge base, and our soft skills. So if it's not my book, who cares? Make sure it's a book, a course, a mastermind group, a mentor, a coach, whatever it is, networking. Find ways to make sure you're always learning, because then you're getting better, not staying the same or moving backwards. And again, if there's no questions, I certainly want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you for the opportunity, Resource YYC team. And thank you to everyone who supported our book and the work we're trying to, accomplish and the problems we're trying to solve in the marketplace.
All right. Thank you so much, Stan. That was a great presentation. I hope everyone got something to think about out of it. And we're very happy to have you to speak about all these different options and things to think about.
Thank you, Rosemary. Always a pleasure. Love my Resource YYC team, and I hope to see you guys soon.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.